Welcome to the Real Life Man podcast, where we discuss masculinity, faith, and the struggles we don't always talk about. All right, well, welcome back to the RLM podcast. Thank you so much for attending here. And we have a guest on our podcast, Guy Kinnear, a good friend of mine that I wanted to present and talk to and get as much as we could out of this episode, because we have so much to learn from Guy. Guy is an artist, lives on the central coast of California, and is an amazing man of God. And so with that, I wanted to know, Guy, if you could give a little bit more of an introduction of what you do, what your whole, what your whole job is, and what your mission is in life with you being an artist. We can just start there.
Wow. Okay.
That's a
Short,
lot.
okay. My elevator pitch of faith and vocation. Yeah, we can do all that in a very short amount of time. Okay. In brief, yes. My name's Guy Kinnear. I am a husband. I am a father of two teenage children who I enjoy thoroughly. And I live in a weird little place in the country that kind of fell off the map, where even GPS doesn't know what to do with you when people drive out to try and find us. We're kind of in the rolling hills, and we're living an off the grid life out there. Although some would argue with us whether or not we're off the grid enough. We're not, like, totally right, but we're making our own electricity and pumping our own water and processing our own trash.
Wow.
And that's kind of what we're doing on a daily basis. In addition, in my early 20s, the Lord called me to a vocation of the arts. He called me to pick up my brush and not ask him again. And he specifically called me into the vocation after the tradition of Bezalel and Oholiab. Those were the two men who were called by God to build the Ark of the Covenant, the tabernacle, the altar. And he called them to do it at the foot of Mount Sinai in the middle of the desert, without any shops, without any tools. He just here's the thing. This thing is going to inspire my people to faith, and I am going to meet with them there, and it is going to be the center of their imaginations. And you're going to do it right now, here. And also, you're going to be using pagan materials to do this. But have a good time. And that passage, the Lord has called me back to that passage multiple times. Like, this is what I called you for. This is what you need to be busy about. And there's Guy in a nutshell.
That's an amazing.
So Guy, you're an artist full time. That's your work.
Okay, you just asked a nutshell question there. To be a creative means, yes, I am an artist at all times. Now, where my paycheck comes from, sometimes comes from my professional arts, sometimes comes from teaching, sometimes comes from commission work. You kind of flex and flow. So I've been a full-time teacher, I've been a part-time teacher, I've been a full-time artist, I've been a part-time artist.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. Like many entrepreneurs, you just kind of roll with the market.
You've done it all. And so go ahead, tell me, where did you study to become an artist? Could you give a little bit more background on that story?
Sure. Let's see. I went to a Christian college and got a bachelor's degree in the visual arts through a Christian school. But then I went to the San Francisco Art Institute for my master's degree, specifically because I was like, okay, I've developed myself as an artist, but now I want to learn how to speak a language that anybody can understand. How do I speak the truth of Scripture and the truth of God, but in a way that I can put it in a completely, and in this case, the San Francisco Art Institute was one of the most aggressively anti-religious schools in the country, to the point that even a Buddhist really didn't feel at home there. And I'm like, okay, I want to go to school there and see if I can figure out how to be who I am and make art that they will understand. And that's where I got my visual arts training for my master's degree.
Hmm.
What were the challenges? Because you had a strong faith in there, and that must have been the rubber met the road, I'm sure, at some points. I want, what is the, um, how did you express your beliefs through such a secular school setting for your master's?
um, yeah, I mean, really, the story of Daniel has become very dear to my heart. Because it wasn't just that Daniel was given a role of authority in a pagan court, is that meant that he also had to enact pagan policies under a pagan king
Oh.
and maintain his faith, and then decide what he said yes to and what he said no to. Which is very different. I mean, that understanding of how to be in the world but not of the world when you are literally at the very seat of the world's power. That was a metaphor that kind of led me consistently. So one of the things I often did was to kind of go okay, what is the language these people understand? To live incarnationally, to understand that Jesus's ministry, that what Jesus did by entering and being the God that lived in our skin, who spoke in parables. Parables were also really key to me. It's like you don't keep throwing out these words and vocabulary and these images that were meaningless to this people. Oh, one of the other things I had a really great training on when I was an undergrad was in world missions, where they talked about cross-cultural ministry.
Mm.
Like, how do you preach about the Lamb of God to a culture that has never seen a lamb? Like, do you try and teach them what a lamb is first and then tell them, oh, and God is also embodied in this animal you've never seen and you have no clue what its uses are? Or do you find an animal in their culture that fits what a lamb was and then say, so in some cultures you say Jesus is the harp seal of God, which is weird to us, but for them they go, oh, okay, I know what a harp seal is. I know what we do with harp seal. Oh, God's a harp seal. Then they can embody that. So walking into that school, I had to my first year was just active listening. I'm like, I don't have anything to say. I'm just trying to learn y'all's language. Like, when I do this, what does that do to you? When I say this, how do you react? What are you afraid of? What are you hoping for? Where are the holes and hungers in your life? And once I had learned their language, then I could go, oh, okay, so prayer is like this.
Mm-hmm.
Communion is like this. And I actually use the sacraments of communion, baptism, prayer, marriage, and the like, because those are really physical, embodied. That's how theology gets its skin on, and go okay, how do I wrap a sculpture around the idea of confession in a way that a completely secular organization can understand it? And if I didn't make it about doctrine, but just kind of said, I would put these sculptures in front of people and say, what does this do? And they would describe what was triggering in them. And then I'll go, okay, we just understand each other better now. That's confession for me, because I was very open about my faith. I'm like, you just experienced in my sculpture what I experience when I engage in confession. And it was often mind-blowing. Quite often they would go did I get it wrong? Because I know Christians are dumb and stupid and closed-minded, and you're fill in the blank. I'm like, no, we now understand each other. So you got it right. And there would be these lights moments. But it meant, working through this long process of translation, and learning another visual language entirely different than anything I had ever done before.
So then were you raised in the church? Did you come to faith later, like in high school or something else?
I was raised Catholic. My family's Italian. My mother came over to the country when she was 16. I was an altar boy. So thankfully, I was raised in a Christian tradition that was very rich in visual culture. So I already had that. I didn't really come to a living faith in Christ until my seventh grade year, when my mother, as an act of desperation as a teenager, sent me to the nearest youth group, which happened to be a Protestant one. And then I was introduced to like the living life and giving your life to Jesus. And then I slowly leaned into his lordship and was discipled by him over the course of for the rest of my life. It's like, the ball gets rolling there and then
Doesn't stop.
doesn't
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah, and then I also remember you said something of like you're trying to figure out who you are. What do you mean by that?
Ooh, okay. That's the other part of the story here. Who am I? Okay, here's the other part of the story, and I'll let you guys decide how much to dig in. I am also I was diagnosed in my early 30s, obsessive-compulsive disorder, which is an anxiety disorder.
Okay.
There is something in my genetics that has caused some of my family members to completely lose touch with reality, because there's something neurologically broken up here. And I definitely have whatever that thing is.
Wow.
So every morning, and this is the fun part, every morning, I wake up, and before I even open my eyes, I have to make a decision. Who am I? And what's true? And who gets to decide who Guy Kinnear is today? I have to make that decision fast before I open my eyes, because there's a life that was chosen for me. There was a life that was predicted for me. There was a life I could be and wants me every day. If I let that life choose me, then I will become one of the babbling homeless on the street, and lose all touch with reality. But then there's this Jesus guy who's standing on the side of the bed, and he goes, "You can choose me too." And if I put my hand in his hand every morning and say, "You get to choose who I am, and I am who my creator makes me to be," then I'm able to roll over and hold my wife, and then I get to be the man she needs me to be. And then I roll out of bed and I get to be the man my kids need me to be. And then I walk into the classroom and I can be the man my students need me to be. And I can be in the studio and be the man my work needs me to be. But I have to make that decision every morning, because which is the funny thing, like I lean into a God, I let a God who I can't see tell me who I am. And because I do that, I get to live in reality. I get to deal with real people and see real people and engage with them as real human beings. And if I don't say yes to this invisible God first, I start slipping down a hillside into non-reality that is I don't know how to describe it any other way, because the OCD just takes hold really fast, but yeah.
Guy, recently I heard a statement. I hope I get it correct.
Sure.
The things that we cannot see, that we don't see God physically, and yet that's actually reality. And the things that I see in front of me that I assume that's reality, it's not actually reality. Like an example would be where you're with a group of people and everyone's having a great time. That's what is perceived. And yet in reality, you've got people in that circle of in that group who are struggling, but the outside says something different.
Yeah. There is like what's real? Like, I get caught up in this language and I have to use it with myself quite often. It's like there's a difference between what's real and what's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to, and sometimes they can be both, which is beautiful.
Can you give us an example of that?
Okay, so for example, truth doesn't feel real quite often.
I agree.
You know, it's like for the many years during my young life, because this was so ridden with fear, anxiety, paranoia, the thought that someone loved me didn't feel real. You know, friends could be in front of me. I could be hanging out with a group of friends and I would be like convinced and terrified, like these people are not really my friends. They're going to turn around and hurt me any moment. And that feeling felt real. So real that the truth that, no, these are my real friends, didn't feel real. But the truth that I hold on to every morning is that, no, there is a God who loves, that at the center of the universe is a God who loves, a God who chose to live life with us. My wife lying next to me is true. She's a real human being who chose to live her life with me. Her words, I can lean into. You know, like she has given evidence of her love and devotion to me. I lean into that no matter what the paranoia inside of here says. You know, like the people I'm standing next to in church, I lean into the evidence like that God calls me. I'm called to love these people and to receive their love. That is the truth. The feelings that can, the insecurity, the feelings, the obsessive thoughts, the intrusive thoughts and everything else that comes with being OCD feels real? No. But by the same token, yes, the example that you offer is because, like in myself, I too learned to put on a good mask. You know, some have called me like a really high functioning OCD in the sense that quite often, like I could be having a total interior meltdown in a room of crowded people, and most won't even know who pick up on it because I've learned. Leaning into a God who pushes truth has in turn like enabled me, like, I need you, God, you need to close the gap between what feels real but is a lie, what is true. But then, God, I need you to get busy. I mean, this was a gift that he gave me in my 20s, standing in one of those very rooms you're talking about. Is like, Guy, I'm calling you to get busy. Look in this room and see what's really going on. And then I need you to respond to what's going on in this room. There are some people here who need me. I need you to go talk to them. I need you to go sit down next to them right now and ask them how they're doing, because you can see it and you know what the signs are. So it's like, yeah, the beautiful thing is like to look at the truth that is actually written inside of human beings and being open to go like, oh, wow, let's get some Jesus in here. But it takes being connected to the Lord of truth. Whether it's the falsehood of the internal feelings or whether it's the falsehood of the mask that a human might put on in a social situation, pressing into the Lord of truth and all these things to go like, and I need to live into that truth, not anything else. I live into the truth, and that's what guides me.
Guy, part of my story is, so I grew up in church, and yet great dysfunction at home. And in my inexperience, I thought, well, I'll go to church and people will talk about real stuff. Because as a young boy, there was so much turmoil in my mind. And I thought, when do you talk about this? When do you open it up and get it out? And it never happened. Okay.
Ooh, yeah.
So I looked at myself as a bit of a freak. Like I've got problems. Everyone else is great. And so a question you seem like you're an incredibly transparent man, which I can see why Marc and you connected so well, because Marc's the same way. But I would like to ask you, if you're okay answering this.
Okay.
What is it like inside your mind some days? You talked about turning over and hugging your wife and choosing to, no, this is actually truth. This woman loves me. but I trust that you have believed lies even about your wife before.
Oh, yeah.
I have. My wife follows the Lord. I do too. We have a strong marriage, and yet the enemy has put lies about my wife in my head. And I
Yeah.
have believed them at times. Thank goodness they did not stick where it caused me to act upon those lies. But the reality is, I think if men will be honest, they will say, yes, I believe so many lies sometimes, and I'm not even aware they're lies.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
So what's it like sometimes? What's a difficult day, if you don't mind sharing,
Oh, God.
inside your mind?
Okay. For this, I'm going to need to get a little bit into what it means to be OCD.
Okay.
OCD is obsessive compulsive, is literally defined by you're trapped in obsessive thoughts, thoughts that are often offensive, obscene, horrifying to yourself. Like the things that are going on are terrifying to you, and they're your own.
Okay.
And then compulsive acts, which are which are there usually because you think this will prevent these thoughts from becoming realities.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Mhm.
And usually we focus just on that. It's like this on a really bad day, I can get into what I call brain lock, to where I will have like about a 5 minute, I think it would be a 5 to 7 minute thought pattern that just goes on autoplay. And that autoplay can literally run for 10 hours. Same 5 minute thought. Bang,
Okay.
bang, bang, bang. And it can start with like, a conversation that happened 30 years ago.
Okay.
And the thing I wish I would have said, or what probably, or on anything. It can be like, oh, I think I'm getting sick. I must be getting sick. There's a plague in the house, like, which is why like the classic hand washing, repetitive hand washing is often considered like what OCD does. That's because I think there's germs in my house. There's germs in my house. Oh my God, there's germs in my house. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to die. That's running for 5 minutes. So I need to wash my hands. If I wash my hands, I won't get sick. You walk away, but the thought is still there. There are germs in my house. Oh, I better wash my hands again. And then you're just kind of bouncing back and forth between this conviction that you're getting sick and there's germs in your house and you have to do something about it, and then doing something to try and prevent that from happening.
Okay.
OCD people, I gotta say, are really safe, or they have been safe, because we're like, whatever it is we're scared of, we wouldn't be having the thought if we weren't scared of it. If it didn't scare us or bother us, we wouldn't be thinking about it. That's the weird trap. So like, which is also part of the fun of OCD, is like going, okay, if I'm worried about this, then I'm not it. Because if I were it, I wouldn't be freaked out about it. So chances are I'm probably not getting sick, because if I was actually it's kind of funny, when I actually do get sick, it's a little bit of a relief, like, oh, I knew it. This is coming up later. But what's underneath it is pain. We believe now, or at least what I've learned, and according to current theories, is that there's a short-circuited pain neuron somewhere inside me. Somewhere inside me, there's a fire alarm that is constantly on, even though there's no fire. If you've ever been inside a house where the fire alarm lets off, or inside a large building where a fire alarm goes off, and that noise is not just annoying, it's painful. It makes you want to run away. It's like, imagine trying to do your job. Imagine us trying to do this right now while a fire alarm is running and there's no way to turn it off. Like after a while, your brain starts like coming up with like, why won't it turn off? There must be a fire somewhere. I'm going to go through this entire building until I find the source of this fire. That's what the obsessive thought is like, there's a fire alarm inside of me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And my brain is desperate to try and turn it off.
Okay.
And so it's inventing. It's like, it's been going on for like, at this point, 45 years at least, that I can say. At this point, there's a level of desperation. It's like, sure, it's because there's aliens outside my window. I did have that one for a little while. There's aliens outside my window. They're zapping me with something. Because anything to explain this pain that's coming from nowhere, and it's everywhere, and there's no explanation for it. So it's like, I can be in one of my worst episodes, in one of my worst periods, I was on what I would call a pain level 8. Like on an 8 out of 10, I was about at an 8. It was all I can do to prevent myself from just screaming out loud like all day long, because it hurt that bad. I kept thinking, I must have a broken bone. Like I kept looking for myself, going, where's the break? But there's no source. And then you can't be present, in the same way if you've ever been in the room with someone with a migraine headache. When someone's in a really, really bad episode of OCD, as I've sat with a number of my friends, that's what it's like. And then you're just trying to figure out, what do I do to turn it off? Anything to turn it off. So a lot of times we'll get into repetitive cursing, like Tourette's sometimes. Tourette's type symptoms, twitches. And I had friends who used to call me Twitchy because I would just randomly twitch and flinch and all kinds of things. So it's like, that's when it's at its worst. The weird thing is you can't turn it off, but I can turn the volume down.
Okay.
1 notch a day, if I'm lucky. So it's like, again, I wake up at a pain level 2. Now, at this point, I've been living with Jesus. I found out Jesus gave me a mess of disciplines before I even knew what all this was. And scientists now are going, oh yeah, this is how you reduce symptoms for OCD. I'm like, wow, Jesus has been telling me to do these things for the last couple of decades. Ooh, that's why I wake up at a pain level 2. If I don't make the right decision in the morning, I'll suddenly jump to a pain level 4. It can escalate to a pain level 6 if I don't do anything about it over the course of the day. If, on the other hand, I commit to the truth, I'm like, the truth is, Guy, you're not getting sick. Truth is, Guy, this person's not your enemy and they're not trying to hurt you. Truth is, Guy, God has called you to love that person, even if they are trying to hurt you. Don't matter. Your obsessive act is to love them. This is the truth. Truth is, you are loved. And the truth is, all these thoughts are because you have a short-circuited wire somewhere inside your head. That's the truth. The pain is real, but it's not true. And if I turn off the fear and the panic and go, God's got this. If I lean into my Ephesians, I believe it's Ephesians chapter, this one is big and key, my Ephesians chapter 3, verses 14. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom all the heavenly family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the saints, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know the love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. If I lean into that and go, that's the truth, that in spite of this pain, I'm still surrounded and filled, and that God reinforces this broken body so that I can contain this love.
Amen.
The pain level ratchets down.
Okay.
The symptoms start going away. The thoughts dissipate. The urge to do irrational obsessive acts dissipates. And am I still raw? Yeah, but I'm not faking. Oh, the other bit is that point of confession. It's like you said, thank you very much, Chris. For a long time, I thought I'm crazy. If I tell people how crazy I am, I'm not going to have any friends. I'm looking at what I got. But also when I confess my brokenness to Marc, or I've got brothers now, I've got a couple of brothers who also have OCD, and we can go call each other real quick and go it's ridiculous. And they're like, I know, right? And then it's the fear of rejection, knowing that I am in a community of brothers who know, who understand, who don't condemn, who are like, Guy, we're with you in this. The fear disappears. Like that, I can lean into my wife and just go, babe, today's a bad day. Like, that's all I have to say at this point. Like, and she knows. It's like, okay, I love you. We're here. My kids know. I'm like, sorry, kids, it's a bad day for dad. Well, dad's at a 4. Dad's at a 6. I'm trying to calm it down. It's like, but yeah, what you said, if I'm afraid of rejection, if I'm in a community like, oh God, I can't tell anybody what's going on. That pain level is escalating, the intrusive thoughts increase, the urge to engage in obsessive behaviors becomes harder to repress. Confession is necessary.
And isn't that so true, right? That because everybody has their cross to bear. This is the cross that you're bearing right now. And we've talked about Justin's story, we've talked about my story, we've talked about Chris's story, and every one of us has a different type of cross to bear. And yet those crosses to bear feel so real, but they're not the truth. And the truth is that we're not bearing that cross alone. We are bearing it with Jesus. Actually, Jesus is bearing it for us. We're not doing it alone. And I think that that's the amazing part, is that, like, man, you've detailed out the process of what it takes for everyone, that everyone's going through this process of pain and suffering and brokenness. And you've broken down that process of saying, hey, you know what? I'm rewiring my brain, because these are the neural pathways that I'm used to taking, like that my OCD wants to take, and yet I'm taking those off track and I'm choosing a different track. Choosing a different identity. Really, it's like either OCD or it's Son of God, and putting my hand inside of Christ's hand when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah. And
I
the
think
weird thing is, like the thing that changes track are like the obvious things that seem like silly. It's like, it's so weird. I treat my OCD with worship. I'm like, okay, either I can be trapped in a hateful, terrifying brain lock all day, or I can sing Amazing Grace. Sometimes when it gets really bad, it's like, okay, either I can have this crazy thought for 7 minutes, or I can sing Father Abraham. There have been days I'm like just driving the car singing Father Abraham. I'm like, if I'm going to have the same thought over and over again, I might as well be Father Abraham. Had many sons had Father Abraham. It was like worship, Bible memorization. If I'm going to focus on something like repeatedly through the day, it might as well be like, love your neighbor as yourself. Like, why not just put that on? Why not just put that record on the player and let that one go into autoplay?
Guy, would you consider yourself a man of courage? No, only yes or no.
Yes.
Or no?
Yes. Why? If by courage it means like I'm scared witless and I'm going in anyway, yeah.
Yes. Okay. For you to come on the podcast and to, Mark, but you don't know Justin and me, and knowing this is going to go out, I cannot see anything else but courage that you're choosing to put yourself out there.
Thank you.
So I'm grateful for that. I was at a funeral a number of years back, and there's this man that I've seen. It's interesting. I've only seen him at funerals, family connections, and he's a leader in the community he's in, and I can tell he wants to talk to me. We met for lunch one time a few years back, but I can tell he wants to talk, like you're talking right now. Just put it out there. But so when I saw him at this funeral, maybe it was about a year or so ago, the last time, I said, "Hey, I've thought about you different times," and he says, "Yeah, Chris, I've thought about this mentoring, and man, I want to talk." He said, "But man, if I told you some of the things that went through my mind, you would not want to have anything to do with me." And of course, there were other people around that came around, so we couldn't talk further. But I wanted to shake him and say, "Buddy, you think you're the only man on the planet with this struggle. You're not. If you knew the things that went through my mind, he said, you would want to have nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that the lie that Satan has for all of us, right? Just keep it in yourself. And really what is this sin leading us to do is to stay concentrated on ourselves. It's not about anybody else but me. And I think that that's really the trap that the devil wants us to be in, instead of doing what Guy just explained, being like, wait, it's not about me. It's about Christ and what he has done for me.
Yeah.
It's also interesting. I was thinking about this, like a couple points when you were talking, Guy, about the OCD. So something I've discovered more recently is that there's a family history of depression in my family, but no one tells us, no one talks about it. So that was a fun thing to just discover on your own one day. Um, but you could like plug and play some of these problems, right? I'm not trying to say, oh yeah, depression's the same thing as OCD. They're not. But the point is like you just kind of focus on it and focus on it, and then it becomes this big thing that you can't control until you let it out, and then you start
Mm-hmm.
putting boundaries on it. You can work with it then. Um, and then the same thing you were saying, Marc, about we need to talk about these things, or otherwise we just keep circulating on it. When I was at my worst, struggling with pornography,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that I wasn't living congruously with my life with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was very aware of this conflict. Like I'm using pornography regularly, and I know it's wrong, and so I'm a horrible person, and it just can't, how do you rectify that? And I was too scared to tell anyone, too, like, what are people going to think if I tell them that this is a problem I have? And a lot of the churches I was raised in, that would be something where you would be dragged in front of the congregation, and everyone would, that's what would happen. It was horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think part of what we really need to stress is that we do need to try to live openly. How do we do that? Because otherwise these problems just fester until they destroy us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I think it ties into what you just offered. Because, like, in one sense, there's a public disclosure that is about shame and punishment. There's another public disclosure. One of my friends says a part of what it means to have grace means to cover someone else's shame.
Hmm.
Gosh.
That's
That's
a part
interesting.
of it, is like we need the public disclosure, but without the voice of shame, without the voice of condemnation. In that, because all it has to do is it only needs to happen once for someone to make a confession and be received with shame and condemnation or violence. And it's like, I'm done. We're not doing this again. Which has caused me to be like really cautious about the tone of voice I use with people, to go like, but by the same token, like, and I feel like this is one of the dangerous things that has happened with a lot of confession culture, is there can be a celebration of the brokenness. Like it with my brothers who I share with, who also have OCD. It's not like we're going, yeah, I know it. Isn't it true? The aliens are. I felt the aliens. The aliens are here. It's like, and there are circles. I wouldn't have to scratch very hard and like on the online community find some other people who are convinced that the aliens are landing on any moment, and I could publicly confess this belief, and we can celebrate it. It's another thing with my brothers to go like, yeah, we don't shame that thought, but also we know what the truth is. Like this is like in the gift of the Psalms, to where the psalmist can be blunt about their feelings of violence, of lust, of doubt, of shame, of depression, of sorrow, and still at the end wrap it around and go, but nonetheless, I know that God is on the throne.
Mm.
Like it's that tail end to go, but I know what the truth, this is how I'm honestly feeling, but I know what the truth is. And for the people around to go like, we will not shame you for this confession of brokenness, and yet we will also affirm what the truth is. The truth is that we are loved. The truth is that God is at work within us. The truth is that God wants us to love each other. The truth is that we are here to heal and that we are all sinners. It's like, in this sense, that has to be done carefully, so that the sin isn't encouraged, but also that the sin in the confession isn't shut down and fear increases.
There's a definite balance there that you need to be able to strike, and it takes people that are filled with the Spirit to be able to find that balance well. And because I think on our own we wouldn't be able to find that balance very easily at all. And yet God does have that inside of each and every one of us. We're filled with the Holy Spirit. This is where we stand, and we are here to be able to be. But I think that so what you were saying, Justin, right, was reminding me, was like, oh, I think being able to tell our story is just confession. And what Guy came out with, just the word confession, it's a huge word, and how is that played out? I think is a really interesting conversation that we can have all over again, because there's so many ways to confess, and there's a lot of wrong ways to confess and a lot of right ways to do that too. So yeah, I really enjoy that concept of figuring out, okay, if I'm going to confess, how do I do it, and in what light? Well, we've taken up a bunch of your time here, Chris, or Guy, sorry. Well, Chris, Justin, and Guy. But we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming on here, Guy. We're gonna have to get you on another episode at some point, do part two. Any other closing thoughts or questions before we end up here?
The only thing that comes to my mind, I feel like we've scratched the surface barely with you, Guy. Talking about this in other episodes, taking it further would be excellent. And this is what I hope that doesn't happen to you. You get off this podcast recording, and the enemy messes with your mind and says, I shouldn't have told those guys those things. They're going to look at me differently, especially Chris and Justin, since they don't know me. But I'll just want to say it out loud. Sometimes it just helps as men with our struggles and our minds with lies, that I just see you. I don't even know you, and yet I have a respect for you, for your courage to come on and talk about this. So I'm only going to see you in a better light, and I really mean that.
Thank you, brother.
And other men need to hear these things from you. That you're trusting the Lord, and yet you go through hell some days. Is that fair to say? Yeah. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Praise God.
So
Praise
good.
God. I'm glad God, Jesus got his hand in my hand this morning. And
I just really appreciate the openness, and we love you.
I love
Care
you
for
guys
you.
too. And God bless the ministry you guys are doing, because there's a lot of us struggling alone, and struggling in a lie. And it's going to take a lot of brave confession, I think, to get us out of those traps.
And that's part of our motivation for this, is that it's not acceptable anymore.
No,
for me.
it's not.
For a long time now, for guys to deal with life alone. It's not meant that way.
No.
And it's not acceptable.
Because as Chris said, every man when you went to church as a kid, right, Chris? You were like, I went to church and I was like, I felt like everybody was on an island. Nobody actually knew what was happening with the other person. It was fake, and I wanted to be real, but there was no potential to be real with the people around me. And that was the biggest segregation that the devil has ever done, and just being able to trap people inside of their own minds, inside of their own beliefs, and keep them. So really is an attempt to saying, hey, there's a different way, because what you're living inside of your mind is exactly what other people are living inside of their minds. It just looks different. And so I'm really encouraged by all of this. Thank you again so much, Guy, for coming on. And we will have you again, I am sure, in the future.
The Lord wills. He's good. Get to talk about this
and
more.
I would enjoy having a one-on-one conversation with you sometime, Guy.
Absolutely. Let's set one up.
Okay.
Have a great day, everybody, and talk to you guys very soon.
All right.
All right. Take care, y'all.
Thanks for tuning in to Real Life Men. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who you think it would speak to also. Please subscribe and leave a review for more honest conversations about manhood, identity, and real life. This podcast is brought to you by Fahrenheit Mentoring. Please visit our website at fahrenheitmentoring.org to listen to other shows and to learn more about our course on how to be a mentor. Have comments or questions to share? Your question may appear on a future episode. Email us at contact@fahrenheitmentoring.org. Until next time, keep being authentic, keep growing, and keep following our God where He leads you.